Well, let's get more on this now with Alexander Titov, a Russia affairs analyst and a lecturer at Queen's University in Belfast. Welcome to the program, Alexander. When Western leaders announced sanctions on Russia, they said that they were only targeting Vladimir Putin and his inner circle. But as we've seen, these measures are now having an effect on ordinary Russian people as well. I'm wondering, do you think that the sanctions imposed by the West, could they threaten to hurt ordinary Russians more than Vladimir Putin and the oligarchs in the country?
Well, that's a very good question. I think it's inevitable that such wide-ranging sanctions will be hurting ordinary Russians. The key targets, of course, are the financial system. So we're looking at inflation, high interest rates, switching Russia off the international system so people kind of get access to dollars, euros, and so forth. There is a ban on travel to Europe. The planes been seized, they can't go anywhere. The Western companies withdrawing from Russia, the jobs losses will be in the tens of thousands, and also very broadly speaking, there is kind of will be less things to buy and less money to buy them with. So a huge blow to Russian economy and ordinary people. And the poorer you are, of course, the worse affected you will be.
That's right, and the sanctions on Russia are continuing to hit the Russian ruble as well as stock markets, but they're also threatening to increase inflation, to stoke higher consumer prices in an economy that was already seeing a higher inflation. Do you think there will come a point when Vladimir Putin will recognize the economic pain that his assault on Ukraine is having on his people, or does he simply not care?
No, I think it's a very important element of Russian domestic policy is the issue of domestic economic stability and relative well-being of its people, in a sense that there's a substantial sums are being spent on providing pensions, providing inflation, dealing with inflation, and so forth. So, of course, it's a huge consideration. My kind of point here, however, would be that it's still unclear who the people will be blaming, whether we'll be blaming its own government or blaming the West for introducing those sanctions. So the jury is still out on that one. This thing can fall in both ways, that the West is ganging up on Russia and wants to hurt us and destroy us. There's a very kind of powerful narrative that the Kremlin have, and people will be, seeing it with their own eyes how that develops.
What about the continued isolation of Russia by both national governments and private businesses and larger companies? We know more and more Western companies are pulling out of the country or threatening to do business with those in Russia. Is that something that Vladimir Putin is likely to care about, or do you think he might take it as an opportunity to find alternatives to those goods and services, perhaps create Russian alternatives or team up with allies such as China in order to circumvent the business that's been pulled out of the country?
I think that we're not expecting the scale of this pullout. The rhetoric from the Russian politicians they're saying that, well, once the dust is settled, they all come back anyway, but if they don't, we will create alternatives and so forth. I think they're still partly in denial, partly in shock about the scale of this systematic change to Russian economy. Basically, there are 30 years of attempt to integrating into the Western and world supply chain, world economy has collapsed, and Russia is almost being thrown back to where it started after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. It will take time to replace not all of them are replaceable, but yeah, I think they will try to do that. And of course, sourcing things from China in particular will be extremely important for Russia in that sense, in that respect.
I'm interested to know about the perception of this conflict from Russia. We know that the country has dozens of state media-run outlets. Independent outlets are really few and far between. Much of the rest of the world has seen those images of much of Ukraine's civilian infrastructure being targeted. Do you think the message that Russians themselves are receiving in their country, what sort of a message are they seeing?
Well, I think you have a very kind of fractured audiences in Russia. Majority get the information from state TV still, and that would be kind of following the official rhetoric of special military operation, limited, targeted just at the Ukrainian army and so forth and so forth. But you do have not so many independent media, but you have Telegram, for example, in Russia, which is widely kind of shared between Russians and Ukrainians. So if you want to, you can find the information. The problem is, of course, with the internet in particular, is that people live in their own bubbles, and we've seen it in the West, we've seen it in the in Russia too. That people choose news which confirm their views rather than trying to seek alternative quite often. So so far we have not seen any kind of major opinion shift, but that might change as economic difficulties mount, I guess.
Okay, Alexander Titov, we will have to leave it there, but thanks very much for joining us on Money Talks.